joining us via WebEx, please just look at the top of the screen that we're showing there. That's how you can offer public comment. We do have a public comment session coming up as agenda item B. So if you have comment to make and it does not involve an agenda item, we'd encourage you to make it there. If you have a comment on an agenda item, we'd ask that you can make it there, but you ask that you can hold off until that agenda item comes up. You'll be given an opportunity. I'll send out notes to you in your chat feature, which you'll want to turn on by mousing over your screen, clicking on the little circle at the bottom that has like a call out, like you see in an old comics thing. Send me a chat message. 1 second. And then say that you would like to make a comment during this. When it's that time, the chair will call on me. I'll let them know that you're there and ready to speak. I'll unmute you, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes to make your comments. So that's how that's going to work. I see one person is on, just looks like they appear to be just on the telephone. For that person, if there is public comment during those times, what I'd ask you to do is you hit *9 on your phone. And that'll give you a little message that you've raised your hand. I'll see that pop up on my screen. And then when our public comment comes up, I'll be able to call on you that way. So at the end, though, please then hit *9 again, and that will lower your hand. So that's how that will work. It looks like we've got everybody that I can tell on board now. And I'll go ahead and turn it over for when they want to start the meeting.
Okay, it looks like everybody's ready. Good morning. Time is now 9 o'clock. I call to order the June 5th, 2020 meeting of the Contractors State License Board. My name is Johnny Simpson, and I'm the California CSLB Board Chair. Joining us today is our colleagues from the Nevada State Board Contractors. As outlined in our board meeting agenda, we will be having a joint discussion with Nevada prior to holding our board meeting. After roll call, I will turn it over to Kent Lay, Nevada's Board Chair, to open their meeting. Police, I would like to note that Michael Layton has an excused absence. Please call roll.
Johnny Simpson.
Oh, I hear.
Kevin Albanese.
Here.
Frank Altamura.
Here.
Augie Beltran.
Here.
David Delatorre.
Here.
Dave Diaz.
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
Mike Layden has an excused absence. Diana Love.
Here.
Marla Richardson.
Here.
Jim Moraine.
Here.
Nancy Springer.
Present.
Mary Tykert.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Also joining us remotely are David Vogt, Registrar, Tanya Corcoran, Chief Deputy Registrar, and CSLB Board's Division Chiefs. I'll now turn it over to Kent Lay, Nevada's Board Chair, to open their board meeting.
Thank you, Chairman Simpson. Good morning. The time is 9:02 a.m. and I call to order the June 5th, 2020 meeting to the Nevada State Contractors Board. I am Kent Lay, Chairman of the Board. Ms. Green, have the notices been posted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the notice was posted on the board's website, Nevada Public Notice website, and emailed electronically to persons who have expressed interest in being kept informed of the board's meeting.
Ms. Green, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Lay?
Here.
Ms. Cavan?
Here.
Mr. Hernandez?
Here.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Ms. McGuire? She's absent today, I believe. Mr. Menzies?
Here.
Mr. Wells?
Here.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. We are conducting our board meeting where members, the public, and the staff are participating remotely under public meeting rules that have been recently modified by the governor. At this time, I'd like to turn back the meeting to Chairman Simpson to continue with California's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. This may be a little clunky, but let's try to do the Pledge of Allegiance to open our meeting. So if everybody would please follow me. Ready? Begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic, which is one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty for all. Thank you. It was a little clunky, but it works. Okay. For the first time in our board's history, we are conducting our board meeting For board members, the public, and staff are all participating remotely under public meeting rules that have been recently modified by the governor's executive order. CSLB Chief of Public Affairs, Rick Lopes, is our moderator today. He will be assisting us by monitoring the public's teleconference line. Board members, when you would like to comment on anything throughout our meeting, please select the raise your hand icon on the WebEx application. I will call on board members to speak. When called upon, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute. You will also click on the raise your hand icon in the lower to lower your hand. So click it. That's how you work it. Click it on and off for those who don't know. Kent, would you like to make some opening comments? Chairman Lay?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Having a problem trying to make sure my mic was off. I want to take a moment to recognize the long-standing partnership we've had with the California Contractors State Licensing Board. For the past 11 years, our boards have remained committed to working collaboratively on shared goals and objectives, which help guide our own directives to address and respond to changes in the construction and economic environments of our states. We are grateful for the opportunity to continue learning from information on the operations, policies, innovative solutions being implemented by your board, and for the ability to share our own experience and strategies with you as well. The collaboration is unique among the Western states and has proven beneficial in a number of ways for our agencies. On behalf of the Nevada State Board, Contractors Board, and Ms. Green, thank you for always being a valuable resource for Nevada and for your willingness to work together on significant matters of importance to us and our constituencies. And I will now turn the meeting back over to Chairman Simpson.
Thank you. We will begin with agenda item B, which is for public comment and requests for agenda items for future meetings. The board values public input as part of our consumers protection mission. To allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today, I am limiting public comment to 3 minutes apiece. If your comments don't involve an item on today's agenda, this would be the time where you can make them. If you have any comments on one of our agenda items, we would encourage you to wait until we get to that item. We will give you an opportunity to make your comments at that time. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and we're not allowed to act on any items not on today's agenda. Second, if you want the board to discuss a topic not on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda for a future meeting. Finally, if you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. That's because board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information and that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Members of the public, if you are with us on WebEx and would like to make a comment, use the chat feature to send the host a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you're joining us on the phone and would like to make a public comment, press *9. We will take any WebEx comments first, followed by telephone comments. We'll use the same system throughout the meeting for public comment during each agenda item. You'll find these instructions on how you can make public comment on the agenda for this meeting posted on the CSLB website. Rick, as the moderator, is there anything you would like to add?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can tell you that at this moment, we do not have anybody asking to
Not
make.
seeing.
Yes, Mr. Chair, at this moment, we do not have anybody requesting public comments.
Thank you. Board members, please raise your hand if you have an agenda item you would like to place on a future agenda. Not seeing any? Rick, please check to see if there are any members of the public who wish to address the board for a future agenda item.
Yes, I have just gotten a request. Stand by 1 second. Ricardo Martinez is asking to make a comment here. So I will unmute you, Ricardo, and please go ahead and make your comments.
Yeah, hi, my name is, could you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ricardo Martinez, and I like to bring up classification, the C61D40, and the note statement that was placed on this classification that's actually made this classification into two categories or into two groups. This license was reinstated when SB 989 share bill was passed into law. And the note statement that the Contractor License Board has placed, which is only stated in your website, it's not written in any of your laws, any of the regulations that regulate my industry. So I would like the board to put this on your next agenda to overlook why this was put in my classification. And I've also asked for public records, and there hasn't been no conclusion on how that note was put in there. This is stopping me from actually performing the work as a specialty contractor, which I'm certified to do the work. This note statement actually placed by the Contractors Board has made my license, this classification, into two, allowing me not to do work because of the certain note and the date that's placed on this license. So I would like to see if the board could take this up in their next meeting. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Martinez. That is the only public comment at this time.
Thank you. Ken, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Johnny. The Nevada State Contractors Board values public input. Pursuant to Section 2 of the Governor's Declaration of Emergency Directive 006, members of the public may make a comment by submitting written public comment by email to publiccomment@nscb.state.nv.us. Emails received prior to adjournment will be entered into the record. Ms. Green, have you received any written public comments via email?
We have not, none at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Chairman Simpson, I turn the discussion back to you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item C. As we will discuss later, COVID-19 has affected construction and many other sectors of our economy. These truly are unprecedented times, and as a board, we will have many challenges to address. I'd like for us to take a moment of silence to honor those lost to COVID-19. But first, are there any board members who wish to say anything? I'm not seeing any hands raised, so please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. We will now begin our item D1 through D4. We will now begin our joint discussion with the Nevada State Contractors Board. There are 5 topics under agenda item D that we will be discussing today. On page 11 is a comparison of California and Nevada board operational and structural comparisons. I will turn it over to Executive Director Margie Green and Registrar David Folt to lead us through topics of our discussion. We will take public comment following the discussion. David, Margie?
David, do you want me to go first?
Yes, that would be fine.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In Nevada, the structure and authority of our board remains the same as in prior years, as well as the license requirements and costs noted on the chart. Therefore, I'll directly speak to some of the other areas of interest and give you an overview of what we are experiencing today. As of May 1st of this year, our overall license count is up nearly 2% from May of 2019. Comparing license data over the last 10 years shows that Nevada's current license population is approximately 9% lower than the same period in 2010. To help illustrate the current impacts noticed by the pandemic, I'd like to share some additional comparison data from recent months. During the third quarter of this year, our new license applications increased by 12%. In April, we saw a decrease of 30% from the same period in 2019, and in May, a decrease of 36%. New licenses issued during the third quarter were down 15% and have since dropped by over 50% in the past 2 months compared to the 2019 figures. License change applications decreased by 10% in the third quarter, 44% in April, and 26% in May compared to the same period last year. Active license renewals were up 5% in the third quarter compared to the same previous biennial period. However, during April and May, license renewals dropped by 5%. The board currently has license by endorsement opportunities with 12 states. We recently excluded the state of Utah from the program based on changes that the state implemented, which reduced or eliminated experience and exam requirements. During fiscal year 2018-19, approximately 13% of the applicants applied for licensure based on an endorsement. Nevada continues to have a residential recovery fund, which was modified during the 2019 legislative session to increase award amounts from $35,000 to $40,000 for individual claims, while awards for claims against a single contractor increased from $400,000 to $750,000, or no more than 20% of the recovery fund balance, whichever is less. And now I'll turn it back over to Mr. Folk.
Well, thank you. And as Margie mentioned, our board makeup has remained fairly steady. We have 15 allocated board member positions, 13 of which are filled. Very pleased about that. Regarding our license population, you'll see that we currently have about 284,000 licensees. There's a reduction in the total population in large part because inactive contractors have failed to, many of them have failed to renew, and that's resulted in approximately 1,000 or 1,200 less licensed contractors. But it's a little bit misleading because we had to close our test centers because of the COVID-19 pandemic on March 20th. And we're going to talk a little bit later about how many applicants are currently pending, but it's considerable. It's approximately 7,000. So if they had gone through the process of taking the exam and obtaining a license, we would likely be showing an increase in our license population. We're currently looking closely at our application fee. We've not had a fee study done in many years where we could determine exactly what our cost is to process an application. We've hired an outside consultant to basically do a time and motion study, and we anticipate having that study complete in October, at which time we'll be bringing it back to our board to ask if they want us to pursue legislation to increase any of our fees. Reciprocity, for many years, we've had reciprocity with Nevada, Arizona, and Utah, and we've most recently added Louisiana. We did run a count of how many licenses were issued because of a reciprocity agreement. It came out quite a bit less than Nevada. It's at 5%. We don't have a recovery fund in California, but what we do have are very effective dispute resolution programs. And just to name a couple of them, we have the ability to suspend a license when a consumer or a member of the public or even another contractor gets a judgment against someone. We're very motivated to try to resolve licensee complaints through mediation. We have a binding arbitration program, and we have our administrative disciplinary actions where many of them have orders of correction. And you'll see that in the time frame that's specified, we were able to recover over $40 million That was in 2019 fiscal year, more than $41 million for injured parties. So very, very pleased about that. That would conclude my update regarding our comparisons. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Do we have any board comments? I see Frank has his hand up. Frank?
Yeah, Nevada mentioned that they dropped Utah. Is Utah still valid state for California?
I was not aware that we had dropped Utah. We have Jason Paddock on the line. Could you clarify that?
No, we haven't made any alteration to Utah.
Okay. Okay, so we're the same. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Seeing none. Rick, do we have any public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no public comments on this item.
Okay, let's go on to D5, our joint board meeting agenda item. Discussion regarding the effects of COVID-19 on the construction industry. I have a few questions for some of our board members, but first I'd like to turn it over to Chairman Lay.
Chair Simpson? Actually,
Yes.
Margie and I had a couple of other issues we were hoping to discuss before we get to that point, if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Margie?
Certainly. Like most states, the call to close the public area of state offices and businesses in Nevada came without much warning. Since construction was declared an essential business, we found ourselves in a position of needing to sustain operations with limited staff and resources. Our licensing department initially prioritized services to ensure that current licensees were not adversely affected and could continue to practice. These measures included implementing alternative methods for communication and document submittal, processing license renewals and change applications, as well as documents related to bond requirements, which have direct effect on a licensee's ability to work, and putting a pause on automated processes that suspended and canceled licenses or assessed a late fee. The board extended the period of time allowed for renewal of a license and has waived any late fee that may have been imposed as directed by Governor Sisolak's emergency order. Additional time was also granted for licensees to replace a qualified employee, provided they have timely filed an application. Our test centers, which closed on March 18th, reopened the first week of May and are currently operating with limited seating in order to comply with phase 1 or reopening criteria. Initially, candidates were experiencing wait times between 1 and 4 weeks, depending on the testing location. PSI recently started offering evening sessions in Las Vegas to help resolve that issue. And I'll now turn it back over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Margie. Very similar to what they've done in Nevada, we've been very, I would say, aggressive in putting information out to the public on how they can continue to reach staff. And we have 2 new email addresses that were created. You could find them on our website and also when you call our automated phone response number. We did extend our examination testing period from 18 to 21 months. And that means if in the event that you fail to pass the exam, we're providing an additional 3 months to re-examine. And that was necessary because of the closure of the test centers. We have not reopened our test centers. They did close on March 20th. We are in the process of obtaining the necessary personal protection equipment. We've reconfigured 2 of our hearing rooms, one in Sacramento and one in Norwalk, so that we can have expanded test sites so that we can provide the 6-foot social clearance so that we can hopefully, again, that's part of our reopening plan for the 15th. We're also going to be open evenings. This is all necessary because as of June 1st, we had 8,870 pending exams, and we're anticipating having 9,300 pending exams when we reopen on June the 15th. the number of applicants, as I mentioned previously, exceeds 7,000. So this is a real priority for us. Our enforcement staff have met the challenge. They had already been provided laptops and other equipment to work remotely. So the transition to working working from their home was not difficult. They've continued to meet production goals. In fact, they've even exceeded our complaint handling cycle time goals. So we're very pleased about that. One thing, though, that I have made our board members in California aware of is that we are having to redirect 18 of our staff to become contact tracers. And that's going to have a tremendous impact on our proactive enforcement program, and that 15 of the staff that are going to be redirected are coming from what we call our SWIFT unit. As far as hearings and disciplinary actions, there has been a bit of a delay, but we're looking at this as an opportunity to see if we can do things a little bit more effectively in the future. And one way would be to conduct our hearings by video conference. Those are being scheduled this month, so we're pleased to see that we're able to look at things a little bit differently. And I would say that where we've been, as far as performance or production, the two areas that we've suffered, one, I mentioned the test centers. The other has been our call center wait times have increased. And that occurred because we did have to redirect staff within our call center because their cubicles or workstations are right next to each other, doesn't provide for the 6-foot social separation. So what's happened is our wait times have increased, and we're taking steps to make sure that we have as much staffing as we can at any one time, but also to encourage the public to send us an email, because we have staff available to answer those emails, but we may have to look at reconfiguring space within our building to provide the ability for more staff to answer public phone calls. So that would be my update. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I got a little ahead of myself. I apologize.
Okay, shall we go on to the next item?
Next item, yes, please.
Thank you. This is item D2 on the board's agenda. Effects on board operation for the enforcement investigation processes. Significant changes were experienced in our enforcement investigative processes as we implemented a temporary remote work schedule. Our investigative process was temporarily modified to suspend job site visits, and we established a process providing investigators access to case documents. Remote access technology greatly assisted investigations in the opening, assigning, investigating, and closing of cases. To best ensure continued progress on open cases, investigators worked with the parties by phone and virtual meetings to resolve concerns and have workmanship items repaired when possible. Our job site visits resumed June 3rd. All other investigations, including money owing, industrial regulation, contracting without a license, and lawful advertising, could be investigated and processed to completion without having personal contact with the parties. And I'll now turn it over back to you, Dave.
Yeah, just if I could just touch on what we've done as far as removing just some of the effects for the licensing division. I think I talked a little bit about what we've done with enforcement. It really didn't take much of a change in order for them to work off site. But we have looked at a lot of ways to help our licensing staff, and what could we do? What can we do to help them to be a little bit more effective? And it really had a lot to do with just putting together a team to look at all of our letters that were being issued. What can we do with public relations and putting information out to the public? One of the things we've done is we have banners on our website that talk about COVID-19 and how to get information so that you know if your county is one that is restricting construction or is it an essential service. For the processing, though, it really comes down to what we've been able to do with putting letters together, with looking at opportunities to make it easier to renew so that they can renew online, how we can handle arbitrations, if you will, so we can do arbitrations remotely. And, finally, what has been the impact on our budget with all of this? And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. the budget's been impacted because we haven't been able to get our licensees through the program. And that is costing us, at least this fiscal year, approximately $1.2 million. So I think that's kind of where we're at. Just again, looking at ways to do things a little bit more effectively and making sure the information is available to our licensees and our consumers. Back to you, Margie.
Thank you. The next topic was on teleworking. So in order to maintain operations, we implemented a temporary remote work policy during the early stages of the shutdown for some personnel. This was a learning experience for us, and we encountered some operational challenges based on our current workflows and a heavy reliance on paper documents. Upon returning to the office, we now have processes in place to ensure the ongoing health and safety of our staff and the public, including submission of weekly health screening questionnaires, daily health notifications prior to entering the office, daily temperature checks, masks required in common areas, limited staff in common areas, and the reconfiguration of office space to accommodate social distancing directives. Looking forward, we plan to conduct an analysis of business processes and other procedures with the goals of implementing electronic workflows and a paperless environment. These steps will help set the stage for enhanced field operations. And I'll turn it back over to you, Dave.
Thank you. Yeah, just to start with our investigative interviews, we have restricted our enforcement staff, or I would say strongly discouraged them from going out in the field. As of March 20th, what we did is we took steps to enable 75% or more of our staff to work off-site from home. This required the disbursement of over 100 laptop computers. Many of these computers went to licensing staff who had previously only worked in the office. Again, the field staff or enforcement staff generally had laptop computers, but it did pose a problem for their investigations in that we're not wanting them to go out into people's homes unless absolutely necessary. So again, we discourage them from going out to the consumers' homes. We are fortunate to have what we refer to as an industry expert program, and that industry expert program enables us to use contractors in the area who are already working to go out and do inspections. So limited inspections have been done and are continuing to be done with the permission or the approval of the homeowner and also of the expert who must have the appropriate PPE, if you will. So we were able to conduct our investigations. They have moved forward. A lot of them have been done over the phone, looking at opportunities to use video conferencing to interview consumers. You can also have, we're also having consumers send us photos or videos of their workmanship items, and it's worked extremely well. It's kept our production up and our complaint handling cycle times down. We're not sure what's going to happen ultimately with the administrative hearings. I mentioned that they're doing them by video conference now. I learned yesterday that if the party being the contractor doesn't agree to the administrative hearing being conducted by video conference, it'll be tabled until January of 2021. So that was kind of surprising, but apparently it's working well and it will save on costs. For subject matter experts, in California, we have our own exam development, and those exams have been developed in-house, but thanks to Wendy Belvance, our testing manager, and Jason Paddock is with us, our chief of licensing, what they've done is they've now developed a new process where they'll be conducting these workshops by video conferencing, and that can save over $200,000 a year in travel. So in public meetings, I have had a number of Zoom calls with Margie. I want to thank Margie for all that she's done to help me and think about ways to conduct public meetings and also how to work with industry and having these meetings by video conference. It's been very effective. We're looking to do more of that. And then ultimately, and I guess to close, we are going to be conducting staff training with the Office of Attorney General in California, just to make sure that when we're conducting our investigations by video conferencing, that we're doing it appropriately, that we're positioning the video like it needs to be, what is the speed of the interview, and how to review documents by video conference. So that's all underway. That training is scheduled for July, and I think by conducting investigations by video conference. And also, we're planning to continue to allow our staff to work to telecommute indefinitely, at least until the governor changes his executive order. And right now we have more than 75% telecommuting, and we anticipate having that 70% continue to telecommute until the governor changes his executive order. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item we had was a discussion on hearings and disciplinary actions. Following the governor's stay-at-home order in March, our board postponed the disciplinary hearing scheduled for March 18th to begin making accommodations to support social distancing initiatives, which we quickly realized could not include traditional in-person hearings and meetings. Moving to a virtual meeting format was the only viable solution to ensure the board's work continued and disciplinary matters could be resolved. All persons scheduled or involved in the hearing process were made aware of the changes, given instructions on participating in the virtual meeting, and received amended notices of hearing, which aligned with statutory requirements. To test the platform, the board heard a single case in April, which ran successfully. In the weeks that followed, our board conducted 37 disciplinary hearings over 6 different hearing dates. And the board also held 64 recovery fund hearings over 4 different hearing dates in April and May. The expedience of our board to move to the online format allowed us to eliminate the backlog experienced since the pandemic and continue processing hearings in a timely manner. An initial concern to using the online platform was the public's ability to participate and provide comments when necessary. While there were a handful of technology-based difficulties, our board was surprised to see an increased participation of contractors and participants compared to in-person hearings. Further, some of the burdens associated with traditional hearings were avoided, leading the board to consider virtual hearings as a standard platform moving forward. And I'll turn it back over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Margie. Yeah, as we mentioned, we're excited to be able to do administrative hearings by video conference. We hope that that will be something that will continue. In order to move that forward, we had to meet with the Attorney General's office. We also met with our Office of Administrative Hearings. We're a little bit different than Nevada in that we contract with other state agencies to hear our cases, but because of the necessity of this, that they've changed their way of thinking, and as I mentioned, they're allowing us to do these hearings by video conference. So that's wonderful. And again, about the public meetings, about continuing to have board meetings by video conference, we're working under something similar to Nevada in that we have a governor's executive order that's approving this type of a meeting. At such time, if that continues, or if that remains an option, I would think that our board would have to decide if that's how they would want to conduct meetings in the future. And regarding the industry experts, I mentioned that already, but I think that there's a real opportunity with trained experts to be able to use video conferencing to perform their inspections. Now, we've met some pushback from the Attorney General's office on that because they like to have our investigator present. They want to be able to take measurements, and some of that may have to be relaxed in the future because we have to look for ways to be more efficient. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. The next item concerns public relations. Communicating the current operations of the board, as well as public access restrictions to our offices, became vital to meeting the needs of our customers. Our website was updated to include a new homepage landing tab detailing specific services available, all available ways to contact the board, as well as state agency programs, government directives, and industry-related resources. Industry bulletins and social media posts reflecting this content were also distributed and posted as new information became available. Lastly, as mentioned with our other department initiatives, our public information events moved to virtual platforms as well. Since the pandemic began, we have held a live online business assistance program, hosted a construction workforce panel, and have scheduled our first virtual senior awareness town hall. And I'll turn it back over to you, Dave.
Thank you. I know we have Rick moderating today, and Rick has been the pioneer and the leader of what we call our senior scam stoppers, and that's something that's been negatively impacted by the inability to have large groups of people that can get together. And so we're looking at different ways to to get the word out to consumers. And I know Rick has been looking at working with the state legislature in California and how we can work on virtual town hall meetings. So I think that's going to be real beneficial. Rick's also taken the lead on conducting applicant workshops. We had been conducting our workshops, in person in Southern and Northern California, and they were very effective. Another idea that I got from you, Margie, thank you. I know you've been doing this for quite some time. What we've been able to do, though, is to conduct those by video conference, and it's been tremendously successful. There was one last week where more than 200 applicants participated, and they had about 168 questions. So I'm real excited about continuing to do that. It's something that we're going to be tracking to see how successful we are in increasing our licensed population. And I think that about summarizes that agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is regarding the budget. Immediate changes to the budget were required as we face challenges responding to the needs of the teleworking environment. Immediate revisions to the budget included IT expenditures to support remote working environment and enhanced security software, as well as efforts to reduce the board's fourth quarter budget by 4% upon direction from our governor. Additional budget revisions and reductions are currently being explored as the board faces significant declines in its licensing revenue projections for fiscal year 2020-21. We are currently in the process of reviewing all expenditures of the board to determine the most efficient and thoughtful way to address those shortfalls, and will be presenting our recommendations to the board at the June 18th meeting. And I'll turn it back over to you, Dave.
Well, we've had to purchase additional laptops, but I don't know that the COVID-19 has impacted our budget more than what I mentioned regarding the inability to test applicants so that they can be approved for licensure. Later today, we're going to be discussing our overall budget and the impact that I would say increased costs and the reduction in licensees had, and that we'll have to take steps to address that. But I would say that's separate from the COVID-19 epidemic. It is something, though, that we have exhibited here in California. It's interesting if you look at how many licensees we had 11 years ago and how many we have today. We have more than 30,000 licensees today, and that's had a huge impact on our budget, and that our costs have increased. And so our board's going to need to consider implementing expense reduction strategies, being one area, and then also looking at how we can increase our licensed population. And one thing we're very excited about is we have legislation pending to create a residential remodeling class, and that could easily could add 100 licensees a month to our population. So we're excited about that. And then also I mentioned looking at our actual costs to process documents and whether our fee schedule has kept up with the consumer price index or the changes in the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is use of
Margie, it's before we jump on, I'm sorry, I did have a question from the public on the COVID-19 that I just wanted to ask real quick since we're talking about that. They're just asking if we could elaborate a little bit on the backlog in testing as a result of that. Specifically, how long of a backlog do we think, and how long will it take to try to make that up?
Certainly. Again, our goal is to begin testing on June the 15th. And as I mentioned earlier, we reconfigured hearing rooms to accommodate, to expand the number of candidates that can test daily. We have managers, Justin being one of them, that have volunteered to work evenings. So we're going to be testing daily and evenings, perhaps on Saturdays. Our goal would be to catch up, and by catch up, I mean we'll have less than, I think it's around 4,500 examinations in the queue by the end of August. But I want to turn over to Justin, is that correct? Justin Paxter, Chief of Licensing.
Yes, that's correct. At the moment, we're going to expand to evenings in all locations, unfortunately, except in the Bay Area. As we get to the end of June, we'll also consider opening it up to Saturdays based on how we're doing.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. That was the only public comment at this point. So thank you, Mark. You go ahead.
Thank you. With regard to technology to limit in-person meetings and concerning administrative hearing procedures, in Nevada, our use of public available teleconferencing software has successfully increased participation while reducing many burdens for the individuals participating, including travel to and from our office, waiting time, and overall comfortability when presenting their comments. To date, only a handful of technical difficulties have been experienced, hindering a participant's ability to engage effectively in the online format. In these cases, we have usually continued the hearing or postponed the discussion until the participant was able to work through the technical issues experienced on their end. In every case, all participants have been understanding of the limitations listed above. So Dave, I'll turn it back over to you.
Just to confirm, Margie, which one are you on?
It's my item D3A, and let me see what it is on yours.
Okay. Yeah, I have to apologize because I got a little out of sync. I've actually already covered that.
Okay, great.
I need to cover it again. Thank you.
And I'll move on. The next item is concerning public meetings. The ability to hold our board meetings virtually has been extremely accommodating and useful for our members and the public during this time. The virtual platform has allowed important policy and budgetary discussions to take place and for staff to receive the direction necessary to continue operations effectively. Emergency declarations have modified public meeting requirements to allow state agencies and boards to adapt a virtual platform. In doing so, we have established an email account to receive written public comment as an alternative means to receiving verbal comments during the meeting. So far, we've been successful in sharing documents and presentations using this format and have found value in being able to now record the video content in addition to the audio. And Dave, did you already cover that in yours?
I did, thank you.
Okay, so I'll go on. The next is item D3, virtual site visits by staff and industry experts. Again, the virtual benefits with regard to virtual site visits have resulted in quicker organization and gathering of case facts, reduced travel time of staff, and zero public health exposure. We've seen an increase in case productivity, including improvements in overall documentation efforts by our investigators. Additionally, this format has removed counterproductive or hostile conduct that can be experienced occasionally during an in-person job site visit. Overall, early results noticed using virtual technology for investigations include an increase in participation from respondents and the public, more expedited delivery of case outcomes, and a less burdensome process while still maintaining professional and statutory compliant proceedings. And Dave, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, I'm ready to move to D4.
Okay,
Thank
good. I'll keep talking and excuse me for the little cough. Over the past several years, I've had the privilege of serving on the National Occupational Licensing Consortium and the Federation of Associations of Regulatory Boards, which is FARB. Both of these organizations have been at the forefront of trends related to occupational licensing and discussions regarding the appropriate role of regulators providing public protection. In terms of licensure, the focus has been on the need to reduce unnecessary barriers and provide opportunities to qualified persons to enter a profession. At some of our past meetings, we've talked about the legislative and regulatory measures Nevada has taken related to endorsement programs, licensure of veterans and military spouses, and expanding acceptable types of experience documentation, all of which have gone a long way to reducing barriers and enhancing portability. Our strategic efforts this year are focused on an in-depth evaluation of our application process with the goal of identifying and eliminating outdated steps and information gathered that provides little or no value in the final decision. Most of these efforts will be process-based, but we also we'll be looking at modifying our laws and regulations to see what improvements can be made. Back to you, Dave.
Thank you. We've taken a number of steps to remove or reduce barriers to licensure. I'd like to just touch on a couple of them. One is we've clarified our form as it relates to doing a late renewal to explain that you can only renew within 5 years of expiration. If it's longer than that, you have to submit a new application. That reduces some of our time frame. We've developed a new application survey. I want to thank our board member, Frank Altamar, for that idea. It's been very effective in getting ideas from applicants, but also the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. 86% confirmed the licensure process was easy to understand. 83% were, well, that was 86%. 83% were satisfied with the time frame to process their application, and 89% were satisfied with the service provided to the board. We've also developed a new license letter, a letter that's sent out to licensees upon issuance of the license. It explains their employer's responsibility. It explains what they can and can't do as far as advertising, what are the contract requirements, the need for building permits, and the steps they can take to maintain a valid contractor's license. We've had a lot of legislation in California as it relates to criminal convictions, and we're, I think, at the forefront of making changes in how we look at criminal convictions as far as qualifying for a license. The most significant change occurs in July of 2020, but we started to relax some of our restrictions prior to that date in line with that legislation, which was Assembly Bill 2138. We've now gone online with our renewal process, and I'm pleased to report that in April we had 3,000 license renewal as it relates to sole owners. In April, we had 3,296 transactions performed online with 1.3 million collected. May, we had 4,747 transactions with 1.8 million collected. We've taken a hard look at all of our letters that we send to our applicants and licensees to make sure that they're really they're license or applicant friendly, and also are they clear as to what additional information is needed. We've revised most of our letters, so they're in use now. And we're in the process of developing an online renewal, an online application for our home improvement salesperson, and something our board will be briefed on later is what are the other priorities. So thank you.
Thank you. The next item concerns automation.
Excuse me, Mark. I'm sorry. This is Rick. We do have a public comment on this section before we leave it.
Okay.
And that is from Ricardo Martinez. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. So go ahead and please go ahead and make your comment. Oops, I'm sorry. Hold a second. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Martinez. Go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to understand a little bit removing and reducing the barriers to licensures. That would be me. So, correct? Since I'm granted the license, is that how the board would see it? I'm just trying to be a little. So if you can make it a little bit clearer to me.
Yeah, sure. What we're seeking to do is to make sure that everyone understands what the minimum qualifications for licensure are, that you're provided clear instruction on how to fill out the application so that you can qualify yourself if you have the minimum qualifications. But also we're looking at criminal convictions, and it's defined, as I mentioned, in law as to what should be considered and what should not be considered, and denying an applicant for a license. We deny very few applicants for licensure in California. I think it's around 1% or something. It's fairly small. But we'd be happy to follow up with you, Ricardo, regarding any concerns that you have. It's just that what we want is if somebody meets the minimum qualifications for a license, that they're able to support that, and so that they can get through the process, get their application posted, and if necessary, take the exam and obtain the license.
Okay, so could you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so once the person receives a license, and when you apply for a license, for example, like my classification never clearly explained to me the note statement that was placed on the license. So I proceeded, got the license, passed the exam. Now I'm a licensed contractor. But when I come to local agencies or to other agencies that regulate the industry that I am, they put a stop to what I have to do because of the note statement that's on here. So the Contractors License Board wasn't too clear either with me when I submitted my application and said, we could give you this license, but you could only do this much on it. You know?
Through the chair, I think this is more of an individualized issue that should be taken offline and not in the public meeting.
Yeah, agree.
We'd be happy to follow up with him after the meeting. Sounds like it's a classification issue.
Right. Could you take care of that for us, Dave?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.